Greetings and welcome everyone tonight to our podcast of You Are the Miracle. I am Cheyenne Kramer. This is my better half,
Don Kramer. Hello, everyone. Hope you're having a great day like we are.
Absolutely. And you guys have heard us for a while now. We've been parked here in Raleigh, North Carolina for the last 3 months. We'll be here for at least a couple months more because we were asked to come here to put together an event specifically about the topic of preventing suicide. And, we were asked initially to come because of the number of college campus suicides happening. But how many did you hear here in Raleigh that they were thinking that veteran suicides were happening?
Oh, it's happening a lot.
Yeah, we've heard numbers anywhere from 22
to 44, 45.
Yeah, daily.
Go with the 44 to 45 daily.
It certainly could be that high. We know a young man in Florida. He's an Army veteran. He lost 5 friends in 1 week. That is totally atrocious. It is totally ridiculous. So we are so blessed and honored to have Mr. Frank Zaccari with us tonight. And he is fresh from a conference that was sponsored by the VA, the government, all about veteran suicide. So we can't wait to hear some of the things that he picked up at that conference that he can share with us tonight. And just to give you a little bit of background on Frank, he is a professional problem solver. He's an engaging TV, podcast, and YouTube show host and a speaker. He has a diverse background. He's been in the U.S. Air Force. We thank you for your service, Frank. Over 25 years in the high-tech industry, and he has authored a bunch of books. He's 5-time best-selling, 2-time award-winning author. He's penned 9 impactful books and co-founded the Trust the Process book marketing program. So he has helped bunches of authors to find success. He's a passionate mentor and he conducts workshops all over the place, like at the VA most recently, but with Arizona State University, University of California, and entrepreneurship. He's all over the place. He absolutely is driven by his mission to unlock opportunities, solve challenges, and foster high-performing teams. So, Frank, we are so honored to have you with us tonight.
Yes. Well, thank you. Thank you. It's good to see you again.
Absolutely. We've connected a few times over the last few years, and I'm always excited to follow you on social media. I think I see a lot of your activity on LinkedIn, but there's so many things that you are just amazing to be able to provide wisdom and knowledge. But that tonight we're really curious to hear more about the Veterans Conference that you just came from. So just curious, other than the fact that you yourself are a veteran.
Uh-oh. Looks like we're frozen.
I don't know what's happening with our internet here.
We're
ours is strong, but it doesn't look like it's wanting to do what it should do. Anyway, I'm not sure if you can hear us, Frank, but hopefully you can. Tell us. Okay, good deal. Tell us a little bit about what led to you getting involved, other than your veteran status, with wanting to assist with the whole veteran suicide phenomenon.
What started, I was a medic in the Air Force near the end of the Vietnam War. And so I was not a combat. I wasn't where the shooting was, but we would get wounded afterwards. And the average age of a soldier in Vietnam was 19 years old. 19. They just finished their prom and they were in a war. And the devastation that they had was just amazing. A 19-year-old no one should see what they saw, but particularly a 19-year-old shouldn't see that. And what the doctors would tell us to do is just get them to talk. If they would start talking, just keep them talking. And then there was a button in the room, so we could press the button, and a psychiatrist would slip into the room and just listen and try to see what was going on. But it was so devastating. And back then, 1970, whatever it was, they didn't never acknowledge that there was a PTSD, right, Don? They didn't acknowledge that it existed. You were just weak. It was battle fatigue. It was something else. And get over it, handle it, right? And so now you got 19-year-olds coming home, not well received, by the way, when we came home, and they didn't know where to go, and it was devastating to them, and they couldn't talk to anybody. What am I going to do with this? And one of the things that one psychiatrist said to me, Frank, the reason Vietnam was so much more devastating for veterans and for the young people was the first time that war came into your house every single night. Because World War II in Korea, there was no TV or very little TV. But Vietnam, every single night, there was something about the war, and people were seeing the atrocities and all this horror. And they couldn't differentiate between the people who were serving, who didn't want to be there, and the decisions that were made way above them. And so the blame was put on to the soldier. And then we came back, that anger and angst was came upon. So being a Vietnam era veteran, the Vietnam veterans that I all met and interacted with all said, we're never going to let this happen again. And so we all try to do something, be it work at a veteran service center at the colleges, or in my case, I went to the state. I live in California. I went to the state of California Senate for Veterans Affairs. And I asked them, what is it that I can get involved with? What is something that makes sense? What do you need some help with? And the first thing that they said was, it was on a Friday, I remember this, and Cindy Baldwin, who was one of the committee liaisons to the Senate, said, you're coming with me, let's go. And we went downtown, which was about 2 blocks away, to the court, the Sacramento Municipal Court. And they have something called Veteran Treatment Court. And Veteran Treatment Court is it's a real court with a real judge. He used to be a JAG officer in the Marines. And when a veteran commits a crime, as long as it's not a heinous crime like murder or something horrible, they have the option to have their case adjudicated through the Veterans Treatment Court. If they get accepted into the court, then it's all about rehabilitation and not incarceration. So the veteran gets put on a program and that they must complete. And if they do everything right, it'll take 12 months. And it's medical, it's counseling, it's medication if need be, it's special classes if need be, anger management, drug, alcohol, whatever the case might be. And they're assigned a mentor who is also a veteran, which is a big deal because I remember when I first got out as a veteran, and people would say, oh, we know how you feel. And you look at them and say, you don't have a clue. You weren't there. You don't understand what it is, right? And so you have a veteran who's also a mentor. Now, if the veteran does everything correct, then they can be out of this in 12 months. At the end of 12 months, all charges are expunged. There's no record, not zero, right? And the court understands that things are going to happen, and there'll be times where one of the people misses a class, or they don't actively participate, or they fail a drug test or something, and then the court would say, okay, you're going to do community service for a few days, right? Or if you did it multiple times, they might put you in the local jail for over a weekend. And one of the things that came up during that time is I said to the Judge Abbott, this is kind of counterproductive. You're out picking up trash. All right. We got all these orphanages here. We got all these programs for young children, Head Start and what have you, and they need work physically done on their building. So why not take some of the folks who've done something dumb, like didn't show up for a meeting, and have them go work there, have them build shelves, have them install refrigerators, have them put in new floors or whatever is needed, right? You have a contractor there to oversee it, but they're at least doing something productive. And when we started doing that, the ladies and gentlemen who were in the program said, all right, I felt like this was a value. I mean, picking up trash is a value, but not to the same level, right? And so the program started to move in that direction, at least in Sacramento. And I had one of my mentees, or a terrible name, mentee. He was a Marine. He was a Marine reconnaissance, the guy they drop behind enemy lines, right? We'll hopefully meet him somewhere. And one of the things that the breaking point for him was their instructions were they were supposed to secure a location, right? And the information, the intelligence was all non-hostiles have been removed and consider any activity to be combative. So they start to move on the position, they take on fire. Okay, well, they return fire. And there were no survivors, and no enemy survivors. And when they went down afterwards, they discovered that there were women and children that they were using as shields, human shields, who died. And he said to me, Frank, I'm a Marine. I'm fully trained and I'm fully committed, and I have eliminated enemy combatants in the past. However, seeing this was more than I could handle. We had bad intelligence and innocent people dying. All right. Several months later, he gets out, and it's haunting him. It's just constantly haunting him, the nightmares and the whole thing. And when I met him, it was in Veterans Treatment Court, and we were talking about it. And I said to him, we'll call him Jake. I said, Jake, you have PTSD. Why are we not seeking treatment for this? And as I said before we went on the air, I gave a talk at this event, and there were a bunch of Marines there, and the Marines said, we're Marines, we'll figure it out, right? And so that's what he was doing. He was going to say, I'm going to figure this out. Well, he took 19 months to complete a 12-month program because he kept screwing up. But he did get through it. He ultimately did get through the program and then moved on, and his charges were expunged. And so that was one of the things that sort of led me to want to continue to be involved with anything involving veterans. But then when you start seeing the numbers, like your numbers are outrageously high. And what they said at this conference was 18 to 22 a day. Veterans take their own life. And 1 out of 5 suicides in the United States as a veteran. And 75%, 75% veteran suicides are by firearm, which is an 85% death rate. Okay, and we said, so if you take pills or carbon monoxide or whatever, it's a 5% death rate. So veterans, if they're intending to commit suicide, they usually get it done. And they also said it's an immediate impulse response. And this blew me away because I was talking to Samantha Shumbarsky was her name, and she's at the VA in Iowa. And she and I were chatting, and she said, Frank, it's a 1 hour from the time we get a call, I'm going to commit suicide, or the person makes a decision, I'm going to commit suicide, or take my own life. They don't say commit suicide anymore. Take my own life within 1 hour. So it's an immediate impulse response. As I said, so we have to retrain everybody, retrain everyone who talks to them, the counselors, and suicide hotlines. And just if you're talking to a veteran who seems to be struggling, you have to understand that there's this immediate impulse response that's out there. And you have to be aware to say to them, hey, so what's happening? What are some of the triggers? What are some of the things that set you off? What are you doing? So that we get to them to talk about them before they get to that immediate impulse response. That blew me away. And I was listening to that and I went, wow. That is interesting. And they did a great job with this. And they had people from the Department of Defense give presentations, and the Veterans Administration, and things that they're doing and programs they're trying to put in place. And one of the things that was interesting is that they admitted several of the things we tried to do didn't work. Because we create this program and then we hand it off to the various military branches, and then they have to run with it, but they got 7,000 other things to do. And so it's not a high priority. Right. Well, they don't want suicide to increase, but they're not going to put a lot of energy into it. But first off, they're not trained on how to do it. They just give you a book to read this book. So one of the things that we were hearing a lot of is that these groups are going to have to take the ball, and they're going to have to go out and do the training, and they're going to have to do the follow-up, and they're going to have to do all this stuff. Because when you take a good idea and you hand it off to somebody else who either doesn't understand it or can't implement it, what good did you do? Right? You just created a lot of paperwork and nothing got done. So it was pretty interesting. I was actually shocked when I got there because I submitted a paper. A friend of mine, Jasmine Williams, said, Frank, I've spoken at 3 or 4 veteran events. And she said, you submit your thing on the quality of life is based on the quality of relationships. Send that in. Send in an abstract. So I said, okay. So I send it in. You don't hear anything for a long time, right?
Right.
You get a notification and it's, okay, you've been selected. And I thought, okay, this is pretty cool. And I got there and I realized that I was one of the very few people who were not a psychiatrist or a counselor. So I was wondering, did they not have enough to just pick me? but I had a great time. I ran into a few people who were worked at the VA or in the Department of Defense who said, I heard you talk, and which VA do you work at? And I said, I don't. I'm just a veteran. And they said, well, I submitted an abstract, but they didn't take mine. And I said, I was shocked they took mine.
Wow.
But it was a little different approach, is that, it's all about relationships. Whether you're going to have success in whatever you do, it's all going to come down to the people with whom we associate. And my mother used to tell me all the time, and when I was a kid, and I'd roll my eyes, and, oh God. I said, show me your friends, and I'm going to show you what you're going to become. Right? And that's part of when we do this talk on relationships are, here's things that you may not even be aware of, like making the same mistake over and over again. I mean, so many of us do that. If you're type A, if you're a veteran, a lot of us just keep making the same mistake over and over. And it goes back to, subconscious and biases and what have you. And in the book I wrote, I'm going to give myself a shameless pledge here, who was #1 and a bestseller, #1 bestseller and award winner. I interviewed 5 neurologists for the book, and we talked about this making the same mistakes over and over. And I didn't understand all the science, but what they did say was that your behavior is based on neural pathways that get built in your brain, or your life through environment or through activities or basically through life 101. And they said if you continue to make the same mistake over and over, you back up here a second. When you do something good, you create a neural pathway. When you do something wrong, it creates a neural pathway. So when you just make the same mistake over and over, you're going back to an existing negative pathway that's already there. And until you do enough good things to override that pathway, you're going to continue to do these things over and over again. Right? And so one of the things that as I was talking, I said, how many of us have said, oh, man, why do I always do this? I said, all right, be honest. I said, how many? So like the whole room all raises their hand, right? Yeah, we've all been there. Another big one that we had was say what you mean, which is a big problem for people who've been in the military, because you're told not to say what you think and what you mean, right? You're told you just do this. You don't really care what you think or what, right? But now you get out, and one of the examples we talked about was, if you don't say what you think, what you want, what you feel, your partner, be it a business or professional or personal, they're not mind readers. They're not going to know what you want, right? And so they're going to draw their own conclusion on what you might say. All right, 99% of the time, it's going to be wrong, right? And so I asked the crowd, how many times have you said something that someone misinterpreted, or someone said something to you that it wasn't what they meant? Right? And it's everybody again, yeah, we have, it's all been there. And I said, well, the facts are you did mean what you said. You just didn't mean it to come out the way that it did. Right? And then you say, oh, I'm sorry, man. That was just in the heat of the moment. And then shortly after that, we say, I tried to talk with them afterwards, but they just won't listen. And I heard that. You can see the audience laughing a little bit. And I said, okay. Now, we made a poor decision, which triggered an intense emotional response. And now we want to use reason and logic. Okay. Right? Reason, and you know this, reason and logic rarely defeats emotion. So they said, well, what do you do? I said, well, the best thing is to say, that was insensitive and I'm sorry. Don't try to justify it. Just shut up and move on. And then we had a little audience participation. We used Family Feud, the TV show. Steve Harvey's the host now. Yep. Right. So I had a volunteer, one gentleman and one woman were my volunteers, and I said, okay, now we're gonna test this theory. So we're going to give you 2 scenarios. Okay. Now I interviewed over 100 people for this book, and I said, I just want the #1 answer. So 2 scenarios. Okay. Scenario 1. The 2 of you are a couple. They made sure they didn't know each other. So I said, it was one lady, it was Vicky and Roy. I said, Vicky and Roy, let's pretend you're a couple and you're having a disagreement. Roy, the disagreement ends with you saying, fine. Okay? What's that mean, Roy? And he said something like, I don't know, I guess I'll work on it. right? So I said to the other men in the audience, anybody want to help him here? And he said, just walk away, Roy. That's your best option, is just walk away.
Mhm.
Well, the number one answer from the survey that I did was, okay, I'll work on it. And then I said to Vicky, the woman, I said, what did you hear? And she said, well, I heard I won. And I said, other ladies, he goes, yeah, that's pretty accurate. Yeah, we'll go with that. Right?
Okay.
So then I said, reverse the scenario. Now the disagreement ends with Vicky saying, fine. Okay. So I said to Roy, what did you hear, Roy? He said, well, it's finally over. And you hear some laughter. And I look over at Vicky and she says, oh, this is not even close to over.
Not even close.
Then another woman in the audience said, oh, and it's going to come up again and again. So the whole point was, if we don't say what we think or we want or we feel, the other person is going to draw whatever is their own conclusions.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a really interesting event. I met a lot of people from all over, from all over the country, and the commitment was the part that just amazed me. Is how committed all these people were to trying to eliminate this, because it's almost a national embarrassment that this many veterans take their life on a daily basis. And one of the things that blew me away was 2/3. This was another thing Samantha told me. So there's 2/3 of the veterans that take their own lives are over the age of 50.
Wow.
And I said, really? I said, I thought they would be, 18, 20, 22. And she goes, no, over the age of 50. They were there, they served, they got out. They tried to reestablish themselves, which is very difficult. Mm-hmm. Even if you've got a lot of things going for you, coming back into civilian life is a very difficult thing to do. And if you're struggling anyway, and you either don't trust the VA, which a lot of people said they didn't, or you don't want to take medication, or whatever the reason is, you don't have a supportive family or friends, then you're going through life and you get to that point of just total despondence. And it's like, it doesn't matter anymore. It's never going to get any better. And one of the people that was in our program who did take his own life at the Veteran Treatment Court, he had said, if I choose to take my own life, it only impacts me. Why does anybody else need to care? Mm. And some of these people had said that the studies were, one suicide impacts 135 people at a minimum. 135 individual people are impacted by one suicide. Wow. Family, friends, people you worked with, somebody who knew you. And then we had, I don't know if you ever saw the clip, Echoes from Afghanistan. Mm-mm. And I might get the name wrong here because I've got to remember. I think it was a 2nd Marine, 7th Battalion, or the 7th Battalion, 2nd Marine, one way or the other. They lost 27 members to suicide. 27. 27!
Way too many.
It's shocking. And when you come back, and if you don't have, and this is where I think what you're doing is so wonderful, is you're not going to do this just with a VA. It's not going to happen. It's got to be a community thing. It takes a village to raise a child. It takes a village to solve this. And we got to get churches, and we got to get schools, and we got to get social services, and we got to get the police, and we've got to get all these different entities who have a stake in our community. All have to be involved. We all have to be involved. And it doesn't have to be, you just give a whole bunch of money. It just anything. Just sitting and talking with a veteran, if they'll listen. That's why the veterans are so important, because they'll listen to another veteran. Okay.
That's true. That's true.
What I learned from the Veteran Treatment Court is they may not listen, they may not do what you say, but they're willing to listen to you. They're willing to have a conversation with you. because there's some kind of bond and some kind of connection that has occurred there. And when you go back to school, I think particularly now with this new GI Bill, what I understand is that they're paying for tuition and they're paying for books.
Mm-hmm.
Like when we got out, Don, they gave you like $200 a month or something, right? Didn't even cover your rent. But now it's a much better program. And I remember being a young veteran in my 20s. I was taking a class in statistics, and this professor, we had to do a hypothesis, whatever, right? And so my hypothesis was, can a student veteran get a pitcher of beer and a pizza for $5? This was a long time ago when you could almost do that, right? It was like a pitcher of beer was like $1.50 back then. And so that was my hypothesis, right? And so this professor stands up and he makes some comment about well, who cares if a veteran? It shouldn't be in your hypothesis. And then he says out loud in front of the class, I'm tired of listening to veterans and your travels and travails. You guys get money for nothing. All these kids are here working their butts off, and their parents are ponying up all this money, and you people are getting money for free. Right? Now, in the room with me were several combat veterans, Marines and Army guys who had actually been shot at and shot people. And we all said, no, wait. I just said, they were all part of the Veteran Service Center. And I said, everybody just take a deep breath. We're not going to go down there and beat the crap out of this guy because then we'll all end up in jail. So we met afterwards, went back to the Veteran Service Center. We talked about it. We went to we asked the dean of the school to come to the Veteran Service Center and then presented logically, without yelling and screaming in anger, what had occurred, why it was inappropriate, and we demanded that action be taken in one way, shape, or form. Now, it's up to you to make that decision. And I remember one of the guys saying, just the hell, they ain't going to do anything. We'll just go find him out in the parking lot and beat the crap out of him. And I went, no, we're not doing this. Okay, that just reinforces the stereotype that you're just a goon. And so he was replaced.
Wow.
He was replaced. And a big part, one of the big things that I talked about was you got to get the business community engaged in this, because because if you can get a meaningful job with a livable income, that goes so far in the mental health and moving you further and further away from a potential suicide. I was in Houston. We did a talk there with a bunch of oil and gas executives. And one of the things was hiring veterans or working with veteran-owned businesses. And one of the things that I had said is, I said, okay, guys, let's say you've got a 23-year-old graduate from Rice University. Okay, Houston, Rice University is the brain school, right? And you got a 23, 24-year-old specialist, whatever, from whatever branch of the military. Who are you going to hire? And they said, we're going to hire the kid from Rice. And I said, why is that? And they said, well, he went to Rice. And I said, well, other than going to Rice, what has he accomplished? Did he have a job other than slinging pizzas? Did he have a car that he had to take care of that mom and dad didn't give him? Did he have any other outside, did he have a second job while he was going to school? And they said, well, why is all that important? And I said, well, let's look at the specialist, whatever, from the military. He's had to get up every single day for 4 to 6 years. He's had to show up. He had to be on time. He had command of personnel. He had personnel responsibility to the point where if the worst thing possibly happened, this young individual was going to be required for the safety of the men and women that he was serving with. And he was responsible for millions of dollars of government equipment, sophisticated government equipment. I said, no, who are you going to hire now? And so I never thought of that. And I said, well, your veterans got this PTSD thing, and I can't have them, going off and shooting people. And I said, okay, well, let's look at that. Let's look at, you want to talk about the mass shootings, okay? How many were done by a veteran? One. Okay. Veterans they understand weapons, and they have an appreciation for them and respect for them. And they're not going to go out and do that because that's contrary to what you're trained and taught. If you are a veteran, you're in a war zone, if you're dealing with enemy combatants or hostiles, right? You don't shoot innocent people. I mean, look at this young man that I was a mentor for. He was haunted by the fact that innocent people were killed in that situation that they were in.
Yeah.
Right?
It's a tough thing for sure. But I'm glad you brought up so many points tonight that are very much in the same space as what we're talking about here in North Carolina right now. Because for one, our event's going to be filled with a lot of people who are more like you and me. We're people who've got pieces to the puzzle that may not have anything to do with, having to take some kind of pharmaceutical. It may not have to do with being a certified licensed counselor or therapist, but we still have the ability to help people have another piece of the puzzle that can get better results. And that's really what we're doing here in Raleigh right now.
Exactly. And I really love what you're doing, and I hope it's something we can take across the country, because it's got to be, if it's not a grassroots bottom up approach, it's not going to happen. And 1% of the population serves in the military, and so 99% of the population doesn't have a clue. Right. And a suicide will occur, and oh, that's too bad. One of the things that came up quite a bit was the thank you for your service. And it was one guy who gave a talk, and he said, I didn't join and volunteer, because now it's all volunteer. When I went in, there was a draft, right? Mm-hmm. They said, I didn't volunteer to come home to have someone tell me thank you for your service. I went to serve. I went to do what I thought was right. And now what I need is a job. And now what I need is a career. Now what I need is advancement and help. And another big thing that what you're doing that I think is so valuable is sitting down with these veterans and saying to them, what you learned in the military translates into the civilian world. Yes. And they'll say, well, Frank, a guy was a Marine. Says Frank, I was a reconnaissance Marine. Okay, my job was to kill people. And I said, there's not a lot of jobs out there. I said, no, step back. You had command responsibility. You had logistics responsibility. Mm-hmm. You had all kinds of different things that you had to be responsible. Personnel, safety, getting from A to B, understanding how to read maps, knowing where to go. All that stuff translates. And I told these people in my talk, I was a corporate CEO for many, many years. And every single company wants leadership. They want loyalty. They want persistence. They want grit. They want integrity. They want someone who's going to find solutions and not say, oh, we got a problem. And they're going to overcome obstacles. Every single CEO that you talk to, any company in the world is going to say, I want that person. And veterans have that in spades. And to me, that's a huge thing that we miss, is to get the veterans to a point where we take those skills and we translate them, and we help them get into the community so that they have meaningful jobs. And will they stay there forever? Probably not, but they'll have a job, and they'll be in a position where they can say, now I want to go off and do something on my own, or now I want a career in this particular field or industry. Mm-hmm. But it's something, that's the one thing I didn't hear much of when I was at the conference. There was all these other wonderful things. And I remember talking to somebody, and after one of the breakouts was, well, what are we doing about the transition? Mm. And they said, well, the transition is that we want to help them with their mental health and when they have these triggers. And I said, well, what about taking them and getting them jobs and getting them something that they feel a sense of community again? Because that was a big thing that we heard over and over, is you're a veteran, your job, your role, your responsibility, and your place. You get out, it's all gone.
Absolutely.
Right? And even if you do get a job, it's usually like an entry-level job, because the first thing they say to you was, oh, you're a veteran, thank you for your service. And the next thing you hear is, well, we're sorry, we don't have anything that meets your qualifications. Okay? which I think a big part of that is not being able to teach a veteran how to translate it. I think you do that, both of you do that extraordinarily well in helping people move into that kind of capacity. And that's a big deal.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Our friend Dory Staley has been watching somewhat, and, we work with Dory a lot too. Dory is actually a certified therapeutic drummer, and she's been able to help people with anxiety and stress and depression and things like that with that. So that's part of what we're bringing to the table too is, again, I love the words integrative medicine. And I think that's part of what you were bringing to the table with the VA was you had all the traditional medical people. You were bringing something that could integrate with that. And that's what we're really talking to people about a lot here in Raleigh right now is how do we integrate and create new solutions? I know you're all about being the solutions guy. And, that's what we want to see. And to the point of starting to build other facilities that become micro communities where we can help people to heal body, mind, and spirit. Because one of my big core pieces is, and you've heard me talk about it, is I love to help people find a sense of purpose and then build an income around that. Yes. And I've been reading a book called Rethinking Suicide. It's actually written by an Air Force psychologist. And he says this is one of the big challenges. One was that he said of all the people that he interviewed and all of the people that were around people who had committed suicide in the military, most of them did not have a mental illness record. It was something that happened just like that. Nobody expected it. And yeah, there was something that just became extremely painful. There was a meltdown and that was it. And he said two things that are important from his perspective. And I'm not finished the book yet, but he's talked a lot about helping more people to discover what emotional intelligence is all about.
Yes.
And helping them find a sense of purpose so they want to continue to live. Yes. So we hope to accomplish those things in September here to some degree.
You do well. We're working on a book with she's a scientist, but she had a traumatic brain injury from a car accident, and she's moved more into integrative medicine. Now she's a shaman, and she does the drum thing also. And there's this calming. I was shocked at the calming effect that this rhythmic music, or just music therapy as a whole, one of the authors in the book that I wrote with veterans, she does that music therapy is, and it was so less intrusive because you're sitting and you're thinking, you have headphones on and you're listening and it's sound and music. And then she'll say things like, okay, now just relax. And what's this make you think of? And is this happy? And what does it bring back good memories and all this kind of stuff? And that's got nothing to do with drugs or pharmaceuticals. None, zero. Nope. Right? And it just has to do with mindset. And can we get you into a mindset where you feel relaxed or feel non-threatened or feel accepted? I think that's the big thing. Yes. Do they feel accepted again? Absolutely. Because when you go in the service, one of the things we talked about was having goals. That when before you went in the military, your goal was whatever. Okay, once you enlisted, your goals probably changed, right? Then when you got out and you got discharged, your goals changed again. So your goals are going to constantly change throughout your life, but you have the ability to you have choice. What am I going to do here? And then you make adjustments. So you have choice and adjustments. So what can I adjust here? What did I learn from where I was that I can take moving forward? Okay, and it might only be one thing, but so what? Let's take that one thing going forward. And I say to veterans and to anybody who's struggling with potential suicide or suicidal thoughts, is you got to ask for help. And it's hard. It's so hard to do that. But there's so many people that will help you. And you'll be shocked at how far they will go to help you.
Absolutely. And, just to kind of emphasize that point. We've been shocked here in the Raleigh area. We lived here for 30 years, and we have never found such a unifying topic as this one. Yep. Because almost every room we've gone into, somebody comes up to us and whispers in our ear, I lost my dad, or I lost my child, or I lost, almost it's like everywhere we go, somebody's been touched by suicide. Mm-hmm. So it's got the ability to be a unifying point for people all over the place, because suicide, it doesn't know color, it doesn't know religion, it doesn't know age, it doesn't know anything.
It doesn't know your gender or anything.
Nothing. So it's hitting people all over the place. It does not discriminate.
No, it does not. And then there's a shame factor. I interviewed a woman whose son took his own life, and she's finally now 15, 20 years later becoming an advocate for it. But she said, I felt such intense shame that I didn't see it, I didn't recognize it, that I couldn't help, or I didn't help. And it goes back to that immediate impulse response that Samantha Sombarski was talking about. And you alluded to it. Okay, there was no history of mental illness. There was just something that Don said, there's some kind of trigger that occurred, and it was more than they could handle, and they didn't know where to go. Yep. And that's where the problem is you got to have someone you can go to. If it's a parent, I've heard this, my youngest daughter, we're going to have our third grandchild here in a month and a half, is you want your children to come to you with problems, not run from you, because you don't think you're going to understand. But we need that from all kinds of leaders, from teachers, from counselors, from pastors, from ministers, from every walk of life, is listen. That's all you have to do. You don't have to solve the problem, because you probably can't.
Right.
But listen, be there to hear what they have to say, and be just present.
Yeah. Without judgment.
Exactly.
That's the problem is people get afraid that they're going to be judged in all kinds of ways, and that becomes part of the issue too. But, I know you mentioned your book, Frank. How can people find you? How can they find your book?
You stole my line.
I stole your line. I'm sorry.
I was going to ask you that. How can we get hold of you, Frank?
And where is that veteran book?
I'm easy to find. All the books are on Amazon. You can get me on LinkedIn. That's where most people connect with me on. We have a Facebook page, but everybody's got a Facebook page. But LinkedIn is probably the best place. Just Frank Zaccari on LinkedIn. That's the best place to go. I will respond if you send me a notice. The book on veterans is called Business Secrets from the Battlefield to the Boardroom. And that was a collaboration with predominantly the Houston, let me get the name right, Houston Regional Veterans Chamber of Commerce out in Houston.
Wow.
Okay.
And I started to talk to them, and I told them what I was trying to do. And I said, I need veterans to write a chapter about their experience, right? And veterans, the immediate response was, well, I can't write. My story's boring. And so we said, okay, look, give me 15 people. All right. So I said, here, I'll send you the questions. Here, answer these questions. And then we'll tune it up. My team will tune it up. And then we'll send it back to you. And then you say yes or no, right? And what was really amazing, we had men and women, we had a parent, we had a child, military child, and we had someone who was a flight attendant that flew the guys over to Vietnam, because they flew them on a regular airline to the war zone, right? And so she was a flight attendant. And so all of them wrote a chapter in this book, and then we sort of prefaced them with, put them in groups and what have you. And the amazing thing, not to pick on our guys here, but the amazing thing was the women's stories were so much better than the guys. It was because guys would say, here, answer these questions. They would answer yes, no. You can't, don't give them yes, no questions. Learn that one. But the women were more elaborated a little bit further on it. And one of the things that Tricia Stetzel, I love Tricia Stetzel, one of the things she talked about was for many, many years, she didn't even acknowledge the fact that she was a veteran. Not that she was ashamed of the fact that she was a veteran. She just didn't think that, why, I'm out now, I got to do this. And she was brought up that, I have never seen, I've been out for 50 some years now. I've never seen a veteran refuse to help another one, period. They will try to help you. Now, if you don't do anything, they're going to say, okay, fine, but they will try to help you. So to get back to what your question was, I'm on Facebook. LinkedIn's probably the best place to find me. The books are all on Amazon. Send me a note. I will respond. We respond very quickly.
Awesome. And you're all over YouTube too. If people just want to be able to see some of the interviews you do and all of that, you do an amazing job.
There you go.
Yeah. Thank you. We have a number of YouTube interviews, and we were on Roku TV for a while with Eileen Bild. And so Roku changed some of the rules. And so we said, okay, we'll just do YouTube then. And then Parade Deck, which, if you're not aware of Parade Deck was a publication that was a military magazine. They're sponsored by Stars and Stripes, and now they're doing more production and movies and all kinds of different things. I spoke at their event last year, and Parade Deck takes whatever I do and they make it pretty for YouTube, and then they post it on YouTube, and they post it on Parade Deck also. Nice. So there's all kinds of ways to find me, and I look forward to communicating with anybody.
Awesome. Well, it has been an honor and a blessing to have you with us tonight, Definitely. Frank.
Thank you.
And thanks for sharing your insights and such from the Veterans Conference on suicide. And, together we can make a difference. We know that. And that's why we call this the You Are the Miracle podcast, because in our opinion, every single person has the potential to be part of the miracle that can change these trajectories. And so, Frank, thank you for being part of the miracle that can help to save lives.
Thank you. Anytime. It's always a pleasure.
All right. Have an awesome evening and an awesome week. And we thank everybody for watching, and we'll see you all again next week on You Are the Miracle.
Goodbye, everyone. Have a good week.
Bye.